It was a day that no one could have imagined, a day when the streets of England felt heavier, darker, and more tense than ever before. London was alive with whispers, murmurs that traveled like wildfire through the narrow alleys and cobblestone streets. Soldiers marched, their boots echoing ominously, and common people paused in their daily chores, glancing at each other nervously. No one spoke openly of what was coming, but the tension was electric, and the air seemed to hum with uncertainty. England was on the brink of an event so unprecedented, so shocking, that it would reverberate through centuries: the execution of its king. Imagine a ruler, crowned with centuries of tradition, suddenly facing the judgment not of God, not of fate, but of his own people. A king, once thought untouchable, now powerless to save himself. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, make sure you subscribe to Civilization's Tactics and turn on notifications. We explore moments like this, moments of betrayal, chaos, and survival, that leave even the most experienced history buffs speechless. If you stick around, you're going to witness how one decision changed the course of a nation forever, and why England's survival hung by a thread. The king at the center of this storm was Charles I, a man born into power and taught that his authority was absolute. From the moment he ascended the throne, Charles believed in the divine right of kings, the idea that his decisions were guided by God and could not be questioned. But power, no matter how absolute it seems, is only as strong as the loyalty of those around you. And loyalty, as history has shown again and again, can be fragile. Charles's decisions began to stir dissent almost immediately. He dismissed Parliament repeatedly when it challenged him, levied heavy taxes without consent, and pushed policies that enraged both nobles and common citizens. Small mistakes compounded, and alliances that seemed stable began to fray. As the years passed, discontent grew louder. Parliament became bold, willing to challenge the king openly, while the general population, exhausted by war, famine, and political instability, grew restless. Imagine walking through London during this time, hearing people whisper about rebellion and betrayal, witnessing the tension thick in every glance. Every street, every market, every tavern was a stage for rumor, fear, and plotting. How could a king, surrounded by advisors and soldiers, fail to see the storm brewing around him? And yet, history shows that arrogance, confidence, and isolation can blind even the most powerful. By the time the day of the execution approached, the tension in England was almost unbearable. Soldiers patrolled nervously, unsure whether to act against mobs or protect the monarchy. Advisors argued feverishly behind closed doors, debating whether negotiation or force would prevent disaster. Citizens peered from their windows, whispering in hushed tones, and questioning everything they thought they knew about loyalty, power, and survival. The kingdom was on the edge of a knife. Every glance, every movement, every word mattered. And then there was the king himself, Charles I, moving through the storm, convinced that tradition and divine right would protect him. Could one man's conviction withstand an entire nation's fury? The people's perception of the monarchy had changed drastically. Once a sacred symbol of stability, the crown now represented fear, uncertainty, and rebellion. Rumors of secret alliances, betrayal within the army, and potential uprisings spread through the towns like wildfire. Families were divided. Friends found themselves on opposite sides of the conflict. Ordinary citizens had to make impossible choices: stay loyal to a king who might be overthrown, side with Parliament, or simply hide and survive. If you were in those crowded streets, would you have risked speaking out? Would you have hidden, tried to flee, or joined the tide of rebellion? Comment your thoughts. I want to see what you would have done if you were living in England at that time. Charles I's choices had led him into isolation. Advisors who had once been loyal began to waver. Some soldiers, fearful of the shifting political landscape, questioned their orders. Every decision the king made now carried enormous weight, not just for him, but for the entire country. A single mistake could spark disaster. Yet, Charles remained convinced that his power was inviolable, that the traditions and institutions that had protected monarchs for centuries would shield him from the chaos. History shows us the tragic irony. The more he relied on this belief, the more vulnerable he became. The civil war that had been simmering for years now reached its peak. Families were divided, towns were filled with armed soldiers, and whispers of execution, rebellion, and betrayal hung in the air. Ordinary citizens, who had only wanted to live peacefully, were forced into impossible situations, making choices that could mean life or death. The tension was unbearable, a pressure cooker that had been building for decades, now ready to explode. And in the center of it all stood Charles I, the king who had ruled with confidence and conviction, now facing the ultimate test of survival. Even before the execution, the signs of instability were everywhere. Parliament was growing stronger, the army was shifting loyalties, and public opinion was no longer firmly behind the crown. Every small act, the dismissal of a critical advisor, a harsh taxation decision, or a failed negotiation, added to the pressure. England was a powder keg, and the smallest spark could ignite disaster. This is where the human drama comes in. Even the strongest leader is subject to forces beyond control, influenced by fear, ambition, and circumstance. And then came the whispers in the streets. The king was to be executed. At first, people didn't believe it. Surely, a monarch, consecrated by God and supported by centuries of tradition, could not be touched. But the rumor grew louder until it became reality. London's streets were filled with anticipation, anxiety, and fear. Soldiers lined the roads, advisors prepared for the inevitable, and citizens crowded squares, anxious to witness history. Can you imagine standing there, feeling the tension, knowing that what was about to happen would shake the nation to its core? At this point, I want to ask you, what would you do if you were in those streets? Would you try to intervene? Would you watch silently? Or would you flee to safety, knowing that even your life could be at risk depending on what unfolded? Comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. The decisions made by ordinary people in these moments were just as critical as those made by kings and generals. Even in these final days before the execution, the king's advisors tried to sway him, warning him of the danger he faced. Some begged for negotiation, some suggested compromise, others whispered that survival meant changing course entirely. But Charles, convinced of his invincibility, ignored these warnings. Pride, belief in divine right, and perhaps a misreading of the situation guided him to the very moment that would become one of history's most shocking events. Every detail mattered. The mood of the crowd, the positioning of the soldiers, the whispers of rebellion in Parliament, the alliances forming behind closed doors. All of it contributed to the tension, the suspense, and the inevitable outcome. England's fate rested not just on one man, but on the complex interplay of power, fear, loyalty, and ambition. It's a reminder that history is shaped not just by leaders, but by the countless decisions, small and large, of ordinary people caught in extraordinary circumstances. And finally, as the day of execution approached, the weight of history pressed down on everyone. Citizens, soldiers, and leaders all felt it. The streets were packed, whispers became louder, anticipation was at its peak. Every heartbeat seemed louder than the last. And in the midst of it all stood Charles I, facing a reality he could not command, a world he could not control, and a fate that would forever change England. The day of the execution arrived, and the streets of London were unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Crowds packed into every square, murmurs of disbelief mixing with awe, fear, and anticipation. Soldiers lined the roads, armor clinking, eyes scanning the throngs of people, while advisors and officials whispered urgently, trying to manage what they could not control. Everyone could feel it, the tension so thick it almost seemed to hang like smoke above the city. And at the center of it all stood Charles I, the king who had ruled with confidence and conviction, now facing the impossible. The man who had believed himself untouchable, now brought face to face with the harshest judgment his people could impose. The executioner's block was more than a piece of wood. It was a symbol of the fragile nature of power, of centuries of tradition suddenly shattered in a single, irreversible act. Soldiers prepared for the procedure with grim determination, while citizens craned their necks to witness history in motion. Imagine standing in that crowd, the sun beating down on your shoulders, every whisper and glance charged with fear and curiosity. You could feel the collective heartbeat of a nation, each thump echoing the uncertainty of what was about to unfold. And then, at last, the moment came. Charles I was led forward, the crowd silent but tense, and the impossible act was carried out. The reactions were immediate and electric. Some gasped, unable to believe their eyes. Others cheered, believing that justice had been served and that a new era was beginning. Soldiers shifted nervously, unsure whether to maintain order or act on new commands. And Parliament? Divisions deepened almost instantly. Even those who had voted for the execution could not agree on what should come next. Would the nation fall into chaos? Would loyalists rise up in retaliation? The uncertainty was unbearable, and every decision mattered. Amid this upheaval, small moments of human drama played out in the streets. A mother shielded her child from the sight, whispering hurried reassurances. Soldiers argued quietly among themselves, weighing loyalty to their oath against the reality before them. Citizens whispered rumors of uprisings, foreign intervention, and betrayal. Even in the chaos, the mundane continued. Merchants tried to keep their shops open, and tradespeople hustled to avoid being caught in any sudden violence. This juxtaposition, the ordinary against the extraordinary, is what made England's crisis so gripping. After the execution, England entered a period of near-total uncertainty. The monarchy had been shaken to its core, but that didn't mean stability would immediately follow. Parliament now faced the impossible task of governing a country teetering on the edge of anarchy. Every decision was fraught with danger. One miscalculation, whether in negotiation, legislation, or military action, could spark rebellion or even foreign intervention. And yet, the nation had to carry on. Soldiers patrolled towns cautiously, aware that any misstep could lead to mutiny. Citizens tried to resume daily life while keeping a wary eye on everything around them. The balance between survival and chaos was razor-thin. Betrayal and shifting alliances became central to this period. Soldiers who had been loyal to Charles were now forced to choose: obey Parliament, risk punishment, or act independently to protect themselves and their families. Advisors within Parliament argued and plotted endlessly, each faction trying to secure power while avoiding disaster. Even among common people, loyalty and mistrust intermingled. Who could be trusted? Whose side were they really on? Imagine living in a world where even the people closest to you could betray you in an instant. The uncertainty created a mix of fear and opportunity. Ambitious individuals saw chances to rise, ordinary citizens found moments to protect themselves, and some quietly worked to maintain order. Each small action, each whispered conversation, could ripple outward, shaping the nation's fate. This is where history becomes more than events and dates. It becomes about people, choices, and the fragile balance between survival and destruction. And as viewers, you have to wonder, if you were in their shoes, what would you do? Would you take the risk, stay loyal, or hide until the storm passed? Comment below, I want to hear your perspective. Meanwhile, Parliament struggled to consolidate power. Removing the king had solved one problem but created dozens more. Royalist sympathizers still posed a threat, foreign powers watched carefully, and internal divisions threatened to undo everything. Debates raged, alliances formed and dissolved, and trust became a precious commodity. Soldiers, once confident in their orders, now questioned whom to obey. Citizens, once loyal to the crown, now had to navigate a world of fear, rumor, and uncertainty. Every decision had consequences that could echo for years to come. Amid the chaos, some figures emerged as unlikely heroes or villains. Soldiers, townspeople, and advisors alike made decisions that would shape the nation's future. Some chose loyalty, others ambition, and some simply sought to survive. And even small, seemingly insignificant choices mattered. A delayed order, a whispered warning, a small act of courage or betrayal could change the course of events entirely. This is why history is so compelling. It's not just about kings and laws, but about the countless decisions of ordinary people caught in extraordinary circumstances. England's survival was far from guaranteed. The execution of a king could have plunged the country into civil war, chaos, and even collapse. Every faction, Parliament, the army, citizens, and remaining loyalists had to navigate this treacherous landscape carefully. One wrong move could unravel everything. And yet, slowly, order began to emerge. Parliament found a fragile balance, soldiers regained discipline, and citizens adapted to the new reality. But the lessons were harsh and unforgettable. Power could be taken, stability could be broken, and survival required cunning, courage, and adaptability. At the same time, the public learned a hard truth. Even the most sacred institutions are vulnerable. The monarchy, once untouchable, had been challenged and brought low. Ordinary people realized that their choices, whether to speak, act, or remain silent, carried real consequences. This understanding of human power and fragility is what makes this period so intense. Imagine witnessing history unfold, feeling the tension in every street, knowing that your actions might shape the future. And here's something to think about. If you were alive during this period, standing in the crowd during the king's execution, navigating the fear, the rumors, and the uncertainty, what would you do? Would you speak out, hide, or try to survive quietly? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to see how you would navigate one of history's most intense moments. The decisions of ordinary people, after all, can have effects as significant as those of kings and generals. The aftermath of the execution also highlighted the fragility of alliances. Parliament had acted decisively, but the kingdom was still vulnerable. Any misstep, whether in military strategy, political maneuvering, or public communication, could trigger rebellion. Soldiers who had once been loyal to the king now had to balance obedience with self-preservation. Advisors within Parliament had to weigh ambition against the risk of chaos. Every small detail mattered, and every moment was fraught with tension. England had survived the unimaginable, but the real test had only just begun. Even amid this turmoil, moments of resilience and bravery emerged. Ordinary citizens found ways to protect themselves, soldiers made calculated moves to maintain order, and leaders navigated treacherous waters with caution. England's story during this period isn't just about one king or one execution. It's about a nation's capacity to survive in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. It's about human ingenuity, courage, and the delicate interplay of trust and fear. As we reflect on this moment in history, consider how fragile power really is. A single act, an execution, can create waves that affect everyone, from the highest officials to the humblest citizen. England's near collapse is a reminder that even centuries-old institutions can be vulnerable, and that survival requires not just authority, but strategy, adaptability, and a keen understanding of human nature. After the execution, England seemed to teeter on the edge of collapse. The streets, once filled with anticipation and fear, were now alive with tension and uncertainty. Soldiers, once loyal to the king, had to navigate a world where loyalty was no longer clear. Advisors who had once plotted in the shadows now scrambled to maintain control, negotiating alliances and maneuvering carefully to avoid disaster. Even ordinary citizens were caught in the crossfire, trying to carry on their daily lives while the nation around them threatened to unravel. It was a period of chaos, a moment when every decision, no matter how small, carried immense consequences. Civil war flared anew across the country. Royalist sympathizers, enraged by the execution of Charles I, attempted to rally forces, while Parliament struggled to assert authority over a population still deeply divided. Families were torn apart, villages became battlegrounds, and the fear of betrayal was everywhere. No one could predict who would come out on top or how long the struggle would last. Soldiers who had once marched proudly under the king's banner now had to decide whether to fight for survival, allegiance to Parliament, or simply retreat and hope for safety. It was a time when courage, cunning, and sheer luck dictated whether a person survived or perished. Amid this turmoil, the resilience of ordinary people became apparent. Merchants continued to trade, farmers worked the land, and townspeople adapted to the new reality. Each small act of normalcy was an act of defiance against the chaos surrounding them. Meanwhile, the leaders of Parliament worked tirelessly to consolidate power, form stable alliances, and prevent the nation from falling into full-scale anarchy. Every decision mattered, from the deployment of troops to the negotiation of treaties, and every choice could tip the balance toward survival or disaster. Even small actions had enormous consequences. A soldier's choice to obey or resist, an advisor's decision to betray or protect, a citizen's whisper in the wrong ear, each could ripple outward and influence the course of history. England's survival was far from guaranteed. The monarchy had been shaken, the army divided, and public opinion unpredictable. And yet, slowly, the nation began to find its footing. Leaders learned to navigate the treacherous political landscape, soldiers regained cohesion, and ordinary people discovered ways to endure amidst uncertainty. It was a hard-earned balance, built on strategy, pragmatism, and sometimes sheer luck. The execution of Charles I left a lasting impression on the public consciousness. People realized that no one, not even a king, was invincible. Loyalty was fragile, power could be challenged, and survival required vigilance, intelligence, and adaptability. This understanding reshaped society, changing the way citizens interacted with authority and influencing how future rulers approached governance. England learned that absolute power, without accountability and flexibility, could be a recipe for disaster. During these years, betrayal and shifting alliances continued to shape events. Soldiers who had once fought for the king had to choose between loyalty and survival. Parliament, now in a fragile position of authority, had to manage conflicting interests within its own ranks. Ordinary citizens, while attempting to maintain their lives, had to make rapid judgments about whom to trust. It was a nation in constant motion, with uncertainty around every corner. Imagine living in that era, where even a single misstep could lead to imprisonment, loss of property, or death. How would you have navigated it? Would you have sided with Parliament, remained loyal to the monarchy, or tried to survive unnoticed? Comment below with your choice. I want to hear your take on this intense historical moment. The chaos also revealed the strength and resilience of England's institutions. Despite the near collapse, Parliament managed to assert control, create temporary stability, and prevent the nation from descending into total anarchy. Soldiers reorganized, communities adapted, and citizens found ways to endure. Slowly, England emerged from its darkest period, scarred but alive, having learned the brutal lessons of leadership, loyalty, and survival. The monarchy, though shaken, would eventually be restored, but never again would it wield unquestioned power. This period forever changed the relationship between rulers and the ruled. Even amid all this, remarkable acts of courage and strategy stood out. Leaders made daring decisions to prevent rebellion, soldiers risked their lives to protect towns, and ordinary citizens acted with ingenuity to preserve themselves and their families. These moments remind us that history is not only shaped by kings and politicians, but by countless small choices made by people living under extreme pressure. Each decision mattered, and each ripple had the potential to change the course of the nation. Reflecting on this period, it's clear that the execution of Charles I and the chaos that followed are more than just historical events. They are lessons in human nature, power, and resilience. The king's death almost toppled a nation, showing how fragile systems can be when authority is misused or unbalanced. At the same time, the eventual survival of England demonstrates the capacity for adaptation, strategy, and collective endurance. Power is never absolute, and even the mightiest institutions rely on human cooperation, loyalty, and careful management. Now, think about this. If you were alive in England at that time, witnessing the king's execution and the chaos that followed, what would you have done? Would you have tried to intervene, stayed loyal, or focused solely on survival? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your perspective. History isn't just about what happened. It's about imagining yourself in these moments and understanding the fragility of life and power. The story also illustrates that stability is not guaranteed by tradition or authority alone. Leadership, adaptability, and the careful balancing of competing interests were crucial to England's survival. Soldiers, advisors, and citizens all had to navigate a complex, dangerous world, making choices under extreme pressure. And yet, despite the uncertainty and fear, resilience emerged. England endured, rebuilt, and learned lessons that would resonate for generations. This period reminds us that history is a mirror. It shows us that power can shift, institutions can falter, and ordinary people have an extraordinary ability to influence events. The execution of a king, the near collapse of a nation, and the eventual recovery of England offer lessons that are still relevant today. Decisions have consequences, loyalty is fragile, and survival requires adaptability and courage. Before we end, let's bring this full circle. England killed its king, watched everything almost fall apart, and yet survived. That survival was not guaranteed. It was earned through strategy, resilience, and moments of courage that would shape the nation's future. If this story captivated you, share it with someone who loves history, comment your thoughts about the moment that shocked you the most, and don't forget to subscribe to Civilization's Tactics for more gripping stories that show history like you've never seen it before. Every empire, every ruler, every nation faces moments of crisis. England's experience shows how quickly power can be challenged, how fragile institutions can be, and how human decision-making, small or large, can determine survival. The lessons are clear. Leadership is tested in moments of chaos. The choices of ordinary people matter, and resilience can emerge even in the darkest hours. So next time you think about loyalty, power, or survival, remember this story. England's near collapse after the execution of Charles I is more than history. It's a testament to human courage, the fragility of authority, and the unpredictable forces that shape nations. Comment below with your opinion on how you think England could have survived if events had gone differently. Would you have acted differently? And as always, hit that subscribe button to stay on Civilization's Tactics, because history like this is never boring, and the lessons from the past can still teach us about the world today.